I want to thank you all for joining us on this call. And I do want to in case we have any media folks that have kind of gotten onto this call, I want to state that this is not a media call and nothing that we're saying here is on the record. I want to thank all the dues paying members of this union. Your membership is the lifeblood of this union, and everything that we're able to do because of you. So I can't thank you for your membership enough. I also want to thank all the leaders that we have that are on the call. Everything that we do is possible because of the work that you do at the local and the council level. And you guys are the nexus to everything that we're trying to accomplish. And, the things that we're doing are so important right now for the federal workforce. And we're so proud of what we're doing. But you all, the leaders out there, make it happen. And I especially, given the difficulty of the times that we're in, just again, really thank the leaders, for being resilient, for exercising patience. This has been a difficult thing that has required a lot of patience, for being tough. And, we're getting through this period. It had not been easy, but we're getting through it. But we're getting through it only because, of the tremendous leadership that you all are showing throughout the country. And I just can't thank you enough for it. So I want to go over the agenda very briefly. I've got a few opening comments that I'm going to give. Then we're going to get a legal update from Yvette Piacek, our general counsel. Then we're going to hear from Steve Lenkart, our executive director and chief lobbyist, who's going to give us a legislative update. And finally, we'll move to questions and answers. So if you guys have any, we received a few questions ahead of time. If you have additional questions, you could submit them in the message board or email them. Matt, are you taking emails
Yep.
for questions or message board?
Either one. I'll put my email in
Either
the
way.
chat here.
Okay. Or you can email them to mdorsey@nfe.org. It's in the chat area. So things have been really difficult in this first few months of this year. Since Trump came into office, it has been a nonstop barrage of executive orders and other actions that have been hostile to federal employees and to federal workers' unions. The Republican-controlled Congress has also been very harsh on the federal workforce and has thus far not been willing to be a check on some of the outrageous and illegal things that are being done by this administration. It is a really difficult period that I believe history will not look back favorably on. However, as difficult as the last few months have been, I remain optimistic about the future of the federal workforce, the agencies for which NFFE IAM members are working, and the future of NFFE and other unions in the federal sector. We have been taking a lot of blows. There's no doubt about that. But increasingly, we are delivering some blows too. And with every passing day, I believe we are tipping the scales slightly in our direction. We are engaging in the fight in every way we know how. And we have the benefit of truth and righteousness on our side. Truth and righteousness about the incredible work that federal employees do out there, the tremendous value that you provide to the American taxpayer, just the safety that is provided, the value that is provided. We shape American life in a way that is truly incredible, and again at great value to the American taxpayer. And for those that are trying to tell some other story, they're having to mislead people in order to make their case. And so, the more that the public is paying attention to the federal workforce and the agencies and all the work that you do, the more they understand and value the great work that you do. So this has been a really interesting period, but one where I think we're getting through some of the worst of it. And I'm hopeful that we can continue to make progress in a few different areas. A few short months ago, this Department of Government Efficiency was a very popular thing, this Doge effort, as they call it, and Elon Musk was using that to decimate our agencies and our jobs. Now, Elon Musk is one of the most unpopular people in America, largely because of his involvement with Doge. And the wind has been taken out of the sails of that Doge effort. That's not to say that it's gone yet, but it certainly was a few months back. And again, with every passing day, we are making more progress to dispel the idea that we need these large across the board cuts to our agencies, because these we all know that those are bad ideas. And with each passing day, it becomes more and more obvious to the American people that those ideas are as bad as they are. So we've been, fighting these. There's been, with Doge came reductions in force. We've been fighting reductions in force on Capitol Hill, in the courts and in the courts of public opinion. The president also signed an executive order on March 27th, um, uh, that aimed to eliminate collective bargaining at 18 federal agencies, and was the biggest assault of collective bargaining rights that we have ever seen in this country. A First Amendment right guaranteed in the Constitution, and just trying to strip a million people, trying to strip their rights to collective bargaining away, unprecedented. So we are fighting that union busting executive order, again, fighting it in the courts, fighting it on Capitol Hill and in the court of public opinion. And we're starting to make some real progress along those lines. I spoke at a press conference on Capitol Hill this morning in support of the bipartisan Protecting America's Workforce Act. That is one of the most important pieces of legislation that we have seen in this country in years. Again, it's the Protect America's Workforce Act, and that's HR 2550, a critical piece of legislation that would stop the implementation of the executive order attempting to take away collective bargaining rights for federal workers that was signed by President Trump. Unbelievably, that legislation now has 223 members of Congress co-signed onto it. That's a full majority of the House of Representatives, bipartisan. That's really incredible. And if you'll think back to our legislative week that we had a few months ago, this was our real top priority, was to get this legislation signed. But first you got to get it introduced and build support for it. And so to get to it is hardly ever that you see a piece of legislation get a majority of the House of Representatives signed onto it. So that's great. And congratulations to everybody who lobbied that and made phone calls and wrote letters and had meetings on the Hill and everything else. Boy, what an incredible job it's been. And we got, Steve is going to tell you about how we got to get that legislation across the finish line. But we're making some real progress on that just with the numbers there. In terms of lawsuits, we've been holding our own as well. We're going to be talking about that in a few minutes. Yvette's going to give you her update. But let me just say unequivocally that we have some big, long, drawn out fights ahead of us. There's no doubt about it. But this union isn't going anywhere. We're in good financial shape. We've kind of our membership has held on pretty well. We've had almost about half of our membership was unimpacted by executive orders, and we never lost dues deductions for. So that was good. And we had about half our membership that lost their payroll dues deductions. But we've been doing the NFFE dues. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. But the NFFE dues, we've been doing pretty well for the half of our membership that we lost. We've gained back about 50-60% of that subset. And so that's really, really good numbers. That's I think we're ahead of our peers elsewhere among labor unions, and we're making progress every single day on that. So anyway, we've got these major fights that we're fighting. While I'm proud of our efforts and have reason for optimism because we're making progress every day, that does not guarantee victory in any of one of these areas. So I do want to be clear about that. We got a big, long, drawn out legal fight ahead of us. We've got a big fight on Capitol Hill to stop the rifts, to undermine, to kind of stop this egregious executive order trying to take away collective bargaining rights, an illegal thing that should never have occurred in the first place. And so we got to fight on Capitol Hill to make that happen as well. But we have reason for optimism, and every day my optimism grows because we're seeing the steady progression that we're trying to make. So let me give you a quick update on the NFFE dues. Due to this executive order signed by President Trump, a lot of 18 government agencies across the federal government discontinued deducting union dues directly from federal employees' paychecks. I want to thank every NFFE IAM member who's made the conversion to e-dues. I do want to make it clear that at this point, agencies, if you work for an agency that still has payroll deductions happening, you should feel absolutely free to continue doing that. Continue the regular dues deductions the old-fashioned way. We are trying to really focus our efforts on those agencies, and there has been quite a few of them that have lost their dues deductions, and get them converted to NFFE dues as quickly as possible. But if you're at an existing agency that hasn't lost dues deductions, feel free to keep doing it the old-fashioned way. There's nothing wrong with that, and we got enough to handle trying to get all our people that got kicked off their dues to get them back into the NFFE dues system. And we're working very hard to make that happen. And it's just really essential for us for the continuity of our union to continue to be able to fight for you at these really, really critical times. When Trump suspended payroll dues deductions, he was essentially unilaterally taking folks out of their union in a clear attempt to weaken our power and our ability to fight for you. That action was both illegal and unconstitutional. And we are, challenging that in the courts vigorously. We've been having some success in the courts, and that is, it gets very, very complicated. I hope you can keep it all straight, Yvette. I hope you got some notes in front of you. But because there's been several different lawsuits. I mean, I think we're on 6 lawsuits ourselves. Like NFFE's on 6 lawsuits with this, suing this administration for this reason or that. And there's a whole host of other lawsuits that we're not a party to, but still affect us every bit as much. And so, so because there, when we have one of these lawsuits, if often when we have success, there's a preliminary injunction, and then a preliminary injunction saying, okay, say example, don't implement the executive order at this agency, and then that gets appealed, and then sometimes that initial decision gets overturned. And so the bottom line is it's caused a lot of frustration for folks that have been kind of lost their payroll dues deductions, moved to e-dues, and then kind of a pumping of the brakes where their dues get shut on, their payroll dues come back on again, and then they get turned off again. And so it's caused a lot of frustration. And I just really ask you to bear with us. There's no until we get legislation passed or the courts rule definitively, we're not gonna, we're stuck in a spot where there's going to be some of this back and forth. It is completely unavoidable. But we just again, appreciate the patience that you all have shown, and ask that you continue to show us those patience. It's not a thing that we're in control of at all. And so I just thank you all tremendously, because we got to make we have to make the move to e-dues, or our union we would be hemorrhaging money, we'd be losing staff, we'd be losing our power, and our structure would be collapsing. We're not going to let that happen. And so e-dues is the answer. But until things fully shake out in the courts and or on Capitol Hill, we're stuck in this position where there's some pumping of the brakes on dues. So again, my apologies for that. Um, we're doing the best that we can. But again, yeah, like I said, we have 50 to 60% of the folks that got kicked off of e-dues converted, and that amount is growing every day. That's a strong conversion rate, and we haven't had long to do it. So, I'm very optimistic that, proud of what we've accomplished and optimistic that our progress will continue. Our goal is to reach 80% of conversions at any one local. We need not be 80%. We should seek for 100% conversion rate. But nationwide, we wanted a goal that was realistic and attainable. And so, our goal has been for 80% conversion rate, and we're standing at 50 to 60%. So, we're on our way to that goal, and we really need everybody's help, particularly in the agencies that have been hurt, lost payroll deductions. The big ones are DOD, VA, Passport, and a few, and a handful of others where we represent folks that we need to, we really need your help. We need your help to make these conversions. So I'm optimistic that we can get to that 80%, and that's going to be an important thing for us. If you're a leader, in one of those agencies, I do want to emphasize, like, if you consider yourself a leader in the union, we need your help stepping up right now. Now is the time that we need your help. When it took us a long time. Before this executive order went into effect, NFFE had grown 54% in a 40-month period, a net growth of 54% in 40 months, which was changing things for our union in a tremendous way. And then just like overnight, we lost half our members. Well, those folks that have been paying dues, happily paying dues via payroll dues deductions, there's no reason why those members shouldn't carry over and start paying out of NFFE dues out of their checking account or a credit card. If they're a happy dues paying member, they should be a happy dues paying member. But the point I'm making is we need leadership at every local. It is very hard to get people to make a conversion on a national level. People want to talk to the people that they know. They want to talk to the local leaders that they see every day, their peers, their neighbors, the people that their local leadership. That's who people want to hear from. And so, there are some places where we've done very well and have a great rate of converting people to e-dues, but there's still a lot of places where we are desperately in need of leadership, and we are making note. If you want to be a leader in this union, now is the time to step up, because now is the time that your union really needs you. So we don't need you, we need people at all times, but this is the time when the chips are down, when we need help, as much as we ever had. So please, if you want to be a leader, please, now's the time to step up and help us make these conversions. There's lots of other things that need to be done in the union world, and of course we want to help with all those things. But like we said, membership is the lifeblood of the union. If we don't have the membership, all those other things go away, and we can't let that happen. And so please help us, particularly in those agencies where we've lost, direct dues. So, thank you for bearing with me on that e-dues. I know it's gotten to be a lot, but let's see here. I did want to mention one other thing, along the lines of membership. We have had a really, really tremendous effort organizing new units lately. We've got about 55 campaigns that for new units. A lot of them have been in land management agencies, but they've been going extremely, extremely well. I want to thank all the leaders out there, our staff, and a lot of the councils have been involved as well. Thank you for all the help getting some new members. I know when things are so difficult, when it's a chaotic time, it's hard to focus on the things that you'd like to do but don't have to do. We've been putting on thousands of members in recent weeks. we've got 55 open campaigns. I think we've won 40 out of those 55, going 40 for 40, winning every single one of them. And we've got about 15 left to go. And of course, there could be new ones after that. But things are going very well in terms of organizing new units, and that is also kind of softening the blow too of some of the losses that we've had by losing payroll deductions. We're getting them back by e-dues and offsetting some of those losses with some really some of the biggest gains that we've seen in new units in the federal sector in our union's history. So I'm kind of blown away by that. There was actually a piece in the Machinist Union IMail that just came out yesterday, and I do want to thank, of course, the IAM organizing department. If anybody is here on the call from the IAM, they've just been doing a tremendous job helping us out with all of these organizing campaigns. So that's my report for now. I'll be back for questions and answers. But for now, I want to turn it over to Yvette to give us a legal update. Take it away, Yvette.
Thanks, Randy. Hey, everyone. So we haven't seen each other for a few weeks, and a lot has happened, legally speaking. With respect to our caseload, like Randy said, we're a part of multiple cases, but there's really two hot issues right now that I'm going to touch on. The first one is the RIFs. I know a lot of folks are concerned about what is going on with RIF threats. And so we had been watching a case that several unions had filed. We were not a named plaintiff, but we have been watching this case that Judge Ilston, if you recall, had ordered a preliminary injunction pausing all RIF actions. Unfortunately, that pause has now been lifted. The Supreme Court actually intervened to lift that pause and greenlit all of these 17 different agencies that were subject to the preliminary injunction, greenlit them to start up their RIF plans again. Now, I want to be clear, though. The Supreme Court lifted the stay, but there's still issues before this judge, whether the president can order staffing cuts. That's really all the Supreme Court addressed. And they said, yes, they can order staffing cuts. But the secondary issue, and where we turn to now, it's still very much alive, is whether the individual agency RIF plans are by themselves legal. So the judge still is very much involved in reviewing these individual RIF plans. Earlier this week, there's some filings before this judge where the government is, sort of walking back some of the characterizations that have made themselves into the record about what these RIF plans are. They've, tried to make clear to the court that these are all pre-decisional documents, these AARPs or ARRPs, I forget the acronym, but the RIF plans are just plans, they're saying, and until employees start to receive a RIF notice or until the union is contacted to conduct bargaining prior to a RIF, if we don't already have that in our contracts, we won't know for sure what each agency is going to do with respect to RIFs. We just know now that they no longer have this pause in place thanks to the Supreme Court. So I know at State Department, some employees got RIF notices already. I'll just note, you need to talk to your BR if you received RIF notices. Your local needs to coordinate with the BR because we might need to file a national grievance over the RIF action, or you might be able to go to the MSPB on your own. Either way, this is something that you need to definitely talk to your BR about. And if you are in fact entitled to go file your own grievance or your own MSPB appeal, for example, keep in mind filing it before the RIF takes effect would make it untimely. It's not a ripe action until the RIF actually takes effect. So don't waste your time filing MSPB appeals if you just receive a RIF notice. Instead, call your BR, make sure your local is aware of the plan for your particular agency. And then we might also coordinate with the Rise Up Network, which I was heavily involved in creating getting organized and getting rolled out. That Rise Up Network is a coalition of a lot of different lawyers from across a lot of different backgrounds, volunteer lawyers who are lending time and effort to support federal workers during this difficult time. It's also called the Federal Workers Legal Defense Fund, and I've talked about it in past calls. But just keep in mind, we might ultimately rely on that network to support our efforts as well. The second big issue I want to talk about that Randy already mentioned is this assault on collective bargaining rights. We've never seen before in all of history, but here we are. We filed our lawsuit. We joined with several other unions to file our lawsuit in the Northern District of California. Since we last spoke, I think last time we talked, there was oral argument being held on the preliminary injunction in that case. A few days after that, I think it was June 24th, Judge Donato did order a preliminary injunction, which meant that agencies were not allowed to implement the executive order, wherein they were going to failure to refuse or failure to recognize unions in the workplace. And so from June 24th until, well, just the other day, everything was theoretically back on. We were supposed to be put back in the position we were in before that national security exemption exclusion executive order was implemented. So now, whether the agencies actually did that, I'm not convinced that it universally was. We were not getting a whole lot of information from the field that agencies were promptly acting on the preliminary injunction. For example, were they immediately restarting grievances? No, I think across the board they aren't. And then, of course, the government appealed Judge Donato's decision. And then what the Court of Appeals granted was a short-term administrative stay, which just meant that now that preliminary injunction had to be paused, put us back to where we were before, so the Trump administration could refuse to engage in collective bargaining until the larger issue of, is this administrative stay proper, or is the preliminary injunction proper, could be heard by the Court of Appeals. So that argument is happening. I think it just concluded moments ago. I was unable to listen to it, but we'll keep you posted. What that court decision, when it comes out, it's going to decide, are we still under the preliminary injunction, which means you have your union rights, or is it stayed and the EEO is taking effect? So we'll keep you posted on that. I'm not sure how that's going to go. It might not go our way. Just manage your expectations that we might not have our collective bargaining rights back until we get to the point where we're at a trial. But again, like Randy said, this is sort of like a game of ping pong. And there's all of this, we're getting jerked around, honestly. Do we have rights? Do we not? And I think that being jerked around causes a lot of frustration for all of us, but I also hope that we can keep perspective that that's part of the game. They're trying to frustrate people. They're trying to make employees think that they don't have rights. But we in the union don't buy into that at all. You are all still union members. We are still fighting for you on the Hill and doing everything possible, including filing these lawsuits. So they can try and knock us off our game, but we're in this for the long haul. And hopefully by fall, as early as fall, we might be to that next phase where we can actually have a trial on these issues. And get to the merits of these arguments instead of this initial preliminary, back and forth. But everything's moving apace. We will be updating you on the status of the Court of Appeals decision out of the Ninth Circuit as soon as we have it. But meantime, stay the course. We're still converting people to e-dues. We're still filing grievances to preserve claims. We're still moving forward just the same as we were last time we spoke. So the second big thing I wanted to talk about Sorry, I covered a lot without even looking at my notes. How about that? So, well, with respect to the collective bargaining, I did want to say we have heard that some agencies, even despite this executive order suspending collective bargaining, some are still continuing to work like normal. And so that's great. We're not going to challenge that at all. Um, but, ultimately, we do have to be prepared for at some point the Supreme Court is probably going to weigh in on our collective bargaining rights. And we have to be prepared that the Supreme Court might not find in our favor. I'm not sure. But at this, we're optimistic. We think that all of our arguments are definitely there. But the Supreme Court has not been very predictable on any of these issues thus far. They've sort of, given some to the agency, given some to the unions. So we'll have to see. Now, I will say one thing that the Supreme Court recently did since last time we spoke was they issued this decision on the CASA case, which really didn't concern federal employees at all. It concerned birthright citizenship and whether people who give, who are here in this country but are not citizens, who give birth to children in the country, whether those children are U.S. citizens. And the Supreme Court didn't get to the merits of that case yet, but they did issue a decision that has bearing on our world, weirdly, on preliminary injunctions, whether they can be issued by judges to cover anyone that could possibly be impacted by the alleged illegal act. They call it a universal injunction. The Supreme Court had ruled just the other day, June 7th or July 7th, I believe the order came out that universal injunctions are no longer permitted as they were before. So they set out some new standards. Basically, we could still do class action type lawsuits and that sort of thing, but the days of judges being able to issue such broad sweeping injunctions are over. So we had benefited from a couple of these cases that other unions had filed or other groups that the state's attorneys had filed. We had benefited from some of those injunctions, even though we weren't a named plaintiff. Our most important cases, the CASA case doesn't really impact us, in my view, but going forward, it changes the landscape. So we're watching everything that comes out of the Supreme Court these days. Again, hard to say which way they're going to go on federal specific issues, but when we've retained an outside law firm that is expert in this. Some of the other law firms that we've been working with on some of the other cases, fantastic, but they're expensive. And so those of you that are dues paying members, you all know it's important to know where your dues money is going. A lot of it's going to these really excellent outside law firms who practice in this field all the time. And so thank you for your membership, because you're able to help our office keep this fight up in all of these lawsuits. And we're going to get the experts to help us put up the very best fight we possibly can. So the other things that you may have seen in the news that we're watching that isn't a good indication for federal workforce generally is the Department of Education. The Supreme Court intervened in that case just earlier this week and basically gave the president the authority to do RIFs there as well. So that was just something that's in the news. We're not directly impacted. We don't have Department of Education employees, but we stand in solidarity with those folks and support them as they're going through what could potentially happen to many of our agencies in the near future as well. So, like I said, hopefully by fall, we'll have more progress on all of these cases in terms of getting to the merits, getting to the direct issues. I also wanted to remind everyone that the Rhode Island case that covered the attempted dismantling of the Federal Mediation Conciliation Service, FMCS, who we use in multiple ways in our collective bargaining world. That executive order was challenged in the Rhode Island case, and it also covered our brothers and sisters in MBDA, Minority Business Development Agency within Commerce. And that Rhode Island case, we got a preliminary injunction. So that was a very good, favorable decision by the state's attorneys who litigated that one. That is still in force and effect. So, again, like Randy said, we've got some wins, some losses. It's a game of ping pong. We're going back and forth. But right now, my view is we are doing pretty well. We are tracking expectations. And we're just going to keep on keeping on. So hopefully, you all, with changes you hear on the ground, are keeping in touch with your BR. The BRs across NFFE are so fantastic, and definitely keep our office, the Office of General Counsel, up to date and in the loop with what's going on in the field. And I'm so appreciative for that, because it's not, we have so many different agencies and so many different employees, and having your eyes and ears on the ground and your active participation in the work that our office is doing by coordinating through your BR is absolutely critical. So thank you all. And then also thank you especially to our leaders who have helped us in the last couple of months prepare declarations for filing in our lawsuits. Those have been fantastic. The Judge Donato, for example, in Northern California, his decision where he granted the preliminary injunction directly quoted our members' declarations. And so just a preview, in a couple of months, when we do have our trial schedule, we're going to need those folks that filed declarations to now participate as witnesses. So BRs currently are reaching out to those folks who have agreed to be a witness in our cases. So definitely respond, please, and let them know, because we have to send over a list of witnesses and let everyone know within the court system who we're potentially going to be calling to support that. So even though I might not see you very much, just know I'm really, really grateful for all of you and all of the work that you're doing, and especially for those of you that are, lending your names and your experiences and your time to support our efforts as witnesses down the road. It's really fantastic. So that's my full report. I'll pass it back to you, Randy.
Thank you. That was great. Okay, so let's I do see a hand up, but I'm sorry, we're not able to take any direct questions on the Zoom. Just a reminder, if you want to send any questions, we're going to take them at the end of the call for the time that we have, and you can email questions to mdorsey@neffe.org. It's in the chat there, and I will turn it over to Steve Lenkart for a legislative update. Go ahead, Steve.
All right, thanks, Randy. Appreciate it. Hello, everybody. Good to see you all. So as you've noticed, DOGE, which was a fiery political issue several months ago, has lost its favor with a lot of people. It's still a risk. It's still out there, and still very much something we need to be concerned about, and something we're actively engaged in and fighting. But people are finding out that when you send people home from whatever they did, that is now broken. We don't have a lot of second and third layers in the government. So VA has clawed back some of its original plans on layoffs, although we're still high risk there. The merger to merge wildland firefighting agencies is one that tapered off, and another big plans that they had. They're finding out that when these people are sent home, it just simply breaks. Whatever it is breaks, and it is no longer being done. So, which is the point of it? This administration certainly is looking to get rid of regulators, law enforcers, and people oversight industry, so that they can break the law and violate regulations with impunity, because that's power. That's powerful right there if you can do that. So, but it is changing. So, and certainly senators and congressmen in their districts, when they're seeing this money withheld, FEMA money isn't making it how it used to make. Their resources aren't being applied to disasters and so forth like they used to be. They're starting to feel the heat, and they're starting to feel the heat when their constituents lose their jobs for no particular reason with the federal government or the federal community in general. So So yeah, what was fun to say a few months ago is not so much fun to say anymore out of this administration and on the Hill, although it still remains an active risk to us. So the Republican sentiment in general is also shifting, along with the shift away from a lot of the rhetoric we heard at the beginning of the year. We have gained Republican support in both the House and Senate. Not as much as I would like, but certainly giving the tremendous amount of pressure on Republicans in the House and Senate from this White House and from their own leadership in the chambers to vote against the administration or to vote against your leadership is noteworthy. That is something that's very brave to do because you're asking for a lot of trouble politically. So our numbers in the House of Republicans in the House of Representatives that we are working with is well over a dozen now. And that's because we've worked with them very closely for years, but mostly since the beginning of this year, giving them the political cover they need in their districts to, survive a primary or whatever Trump or whomever may throw at them. And then in the Senate as well, too, we probably have about 6, maybe 8 senators that are definitely softening their stances against federal employees because they too are realizing how important we are and what we do in achieving America's mission. So things are trending in a helpful way. As I said, I don't want to be too optimistic, but we have to earn those relationships, and we're continuing to do that. But definitely, it is a different mood and feel than it was 2 or 3 months ago, and we're all very happy about that. So, some legislative victories. I have good news, which I'm happy to report. It is not all doom and gloom, as it was a few months ago, last time you saw me. So, most of you heard about the big budget bill, big beautiful bill, the horribly named the Big Beautiful Bill Act, or as I prefer, Big Bunch of Bullshit. That was the reconciliation bill, as some of you know, and within that bill that was their main platform to attack federal employees. And within that bill was eliminating the first supplement for our 6C and first responders, changing annuity calculations from high 3 to high 5, which would have been a cut to your pensions, increasing FERS. Anywhere between there were different versions of legislation that was proposed, but it was anywhere between 4 and 15% increase your FER calculations or your FERS contributions, which would have meant a 4 to 15 cut in your pay with no increase in your annuity. So they also wanted to attack the civil service. They wanted to extort the civil service new hires into accepting Schedule PC, which is the old Schedule F, which is essentially makes you a political appointee and takes you outside of the civil service. They want to extort new members that if you new employees of the federal government that if you agree not to be in the civil service, you'll pay a lower FERS fee. If you want your civil service protections, you have to pay anywhere between 4 and 15%. And they also wanted to get rid of official time. That and more was all included in this bill. And NFFE and our coalition of unions that we work with, including the AFL, and of course, the machinists are always with us. We fought all those things off, and none of those provisions were in the final bill. And that meant taking arguments to the parliamentarian. It meant talking to Republicans behind the scene and saying, none of this makes any sense. None of it is necessary, and most of it is probably illegal. So get it out of the bill. And eventually, Republicans gave up that fight to include those. So their biggest platform that they had to really stick it to the federal workforce went down in flames a few weeks ago. So that's the good news. The fight is not over, but that was a huge, huge victory for us. So more recently,
great job, Steve. Great job.
Thank you.
Thanks for leading that effort. That was tremendous.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we do play a leadership role. Us along with the AFL, CIO, and AFG and IPTE and a couple others are the leaders of the pack, for the other 60 or 80 unions that have federal employees. They're not predominantly federal employees, but have federal employees. But it's a very, very large coalition, and we serve in a leadership capacity for that. So the National Defense Authorization has started up in the House, and we secured an incredibly important victory this week, just a couple of days ago. In the House Armed Services Committee, the NDA was under consideration for final passage in the committee, and we won an amendment to defund the executive order on the restrictions to collective bargaining based on national security concerns. While that would only affect DOD, it was still a huge victory. And to do that, we had 3 Republicans in committee crossover, buck the leadership and vote with us, which is incredibly promising. So, and that's what I'm talking about is, the winds of change, while not blowing as strongly as I would like them to blow, are indeed blowing. And we had 3 members in committee vote with all Democrats and put this amendment in there that if we can retain it on the House floor and retain it in the Senate, the national security issue for collective bargaining will be defunded, which means that we'll go back to how things were before Trump passed that executive order. So fingers crossed, there, a long way to go, but that was an incredible victory. And, again, thanks to 3 Republicans that crossed over to vote with Democrats. So the appropriation season is also starting up. We will be working with every single appropriations committee there is out there on a list of what we're calling defunds. And what defunds are, it's essentially a law that says, the president's initiative, none of the money may be used to do a certain initiative. And those defunds are targeting a lot of the executive orders that the Trump administration has set out, including the restrictions to collective bargaining. We're still trying to block Schedule PC, even though it's in place and it's operational. We're trying to withdraw it and kill it. The old Schedule F again, which makes career civil service people into political appointees. We want to defund that. We want to block any RIFs, unauthorized RIFs, and we want to reinstate employees that were terminated, both probationary and other folks who were improperly terminated as well too. So we'll be working with all of the committees to get those defunds in there, and that'll take place over the next few months. Randy mentioned HR 2550, the discharge petition. So let me back up a little bit. HR 2550, Protecting America's Workforce Act. That is the bill that will withdraw and defund the Trump executive order restricting collective bargaining based on national security reasons or alleged national security reasons, because there are no national security reasons, but because the law is so poorly written, he could take advantage of that. So this bill, Protecting America's Workforce Act, HR 2550, we have an alert on our website. It's been there for a while. We are forcing this bill to the floor for a vote. The Republican leadership will not call this bill to the floor for a vote on their own. There's a rule that says if you can have a majority of the House sign a petition, you can then force leadership to call this bill to the floor. So it's called a discharge petition, which means you're pulling it out of a committee and you're forcing it to the floor for a vote. And as Randy said, we have all Democrats, 215 Democrats, every single one in the House, and we have 7 Republicans signed on to this thing. That makes 222 co-sponsors, and that is enough to get that across the finish line. If we pass it in the House, and again, it will stop the Trump EO from restricting collective bargaining based on national security reasons or alleged national security reasons. So Matt has a PR and alert going up today. So please, if you haven't signed up for legislative alerts, please do so. So the future going forward, we still have plenty of fight in us. I do believe we're going to prevail. It's going to be a lot of work for all of us, but that includes you as well. We are already in discussions on how to rebuild the federal workforce and the federal government in general, since now it's been stripped down to the studs. This is an opportunity for us to fix a lot of things in the past that should have been fixed, and we asked for these things to be fixed over the years, but huge gaps that allow corruption and undue political influence. So we've started discussing that when we do get back in power, we are going to fix those things. So we're not just fighting what's going on today, we're also looking to the future and taking advantage of this turmoil to do some good in the near future. We have a Supreme Court that does believe the president should have powers over the Constitution, above the Constitution, which is absolutely incorrect. We are a democratic republic, which means the Constitution is the highest law in the land. So our support from the Constitution, our support from the Supreme Court for the Constitution, I fear that, as all Americans should fear, but that means that the Congress is more important than ever. So please do sign up for those alerts, get involved, get to know your representative and your senators and your state, let them know you're there, send letters, make phone calls, because that's what it's going to take. We're going to have to commandeer this Congress from the powers that be and do the things that we're doing. We're off to a good start, but we got to keep it going, and that means all of you. So thank you in advance. Thank you especially for all of you who are doing great things. Thank you for coming to Ledge Week. You have no idea how much difference that makes. And that is my report. I will turn that back to you, Randy.
Okay, thank you. We just posted the Capitol switchboard number 202-224-3121. We want everybody to call their House rep. We don't need to call their senators on this one, but their House rep, and ask them to sign the discharge petition on the Protect America's Workforce Act. Again, HR 2550. That is happening right now on Capitol Hill. That discharge petition they're gathering signatures right now, and we need a majority of the House to sign that discharge petition. We already have a majority of the House co-sponsored to the bill. So we just got to get the people who are on the bill already to just sign the discharge petition. And so that's a current thing that's happening. Please do it today. Please ask your coworkers to do it. Don't use government equipment or government time. Do it on your break. Do it on your personal info. But we need to get signatures onto that bill. I do want to address one thing that Steve said. He talked about all the Republicans we're working with. In truth, we're working with all members of Congress, and that's true. He was talking about a select few in the House and in the Senate, where these folks are finally getting the courage to stick their neck out and really stand with federal employees on some of these issues and buck the president and say, no, we're going to take out, we're going to make null and void your executive order that should have never been signed. So we've got, maybe, 15, 20, 25, folks that are starting to get that level of courage to really, stand up and fight for federal employees the way we want to see that. But we work with all congressional offices, and we've had things pass unanimously. Because we do work with every congressional office. We take great pride in being the most bipartisan union in America, and in truth, we get things done on both sides of the aisle and with all members of Congress. So we're working with them all. But we finally got a few that are willing to stick their neck out for federal employees, when a few months ago there weren't many, if any. So we're building that group that is willing to say, hey, all right, enough of this garbage. This little going after the Doge experiment is over, and we got to be serious about running this country. So we got just a few minutes for Q&A. Matt, take us away on that, please.
So we just have a few minutes here. So if we don't get to your question, we will answer it via email as soon as this call is over. So I'm going to just ask some questions here in the order I received them, just out of fairness. The first one is the president required to provide any evidence to support an order if they're going to exclude an agency or subdivision from collective bargaining rights because of national security work under the Federal Service Labor Management Relations Statute?
I'll take that one. No, our lawsuit doesn't hinge on that. Luckily, our lawsuit that's still very much going forward is going to decide whether the attack against collective bargaining rights was motivated by basically retaliation for all of our free speech, that we've been, doing what unions do and calling out when the administration has done unconstitutional things, and we filed lawsuits. And our fact sheet, or the Trump administration's fact sheet, when they issued the executive order, basically called out unions and said, we're only going to take away collective bargaining rights with the unions who aren't willing to work with us. And honestly, that's not what we're about. So the judge, if you've listened to any of the arguments, the judge is sort of tiptoed around, like wanting to get to whether this was truly arbitrary and capricious in that sense. But unfortunately, it won't get that far. That's just how a law is written.
Thanks, Yvette. Our next question here is, will the wage grade personnel receive a cost of living adjustment this year like the GS employees did?
Yeah, I'll take that. So the problem with the wage increase for this year is that this administration has not created the DoD Wage Committee, and that's the group that the organization within Department of Defense that approves the annual increase for wage graders each year. So because that has not been convened, meaning they have not appointed people to that committee, the wage graders are stuck. If you're, a wage grade person, you are actively having your wages suppressed by this White House. They're in no hurry to give people raises this year. Now, what we are doing is working with Republican leadership in the House and Senate, saying that most of these wage wage employees are, facilities, DoD and VA facilities. A lot of them are red states and red districts, and we're asking them to put pressure on the White House to convene this committee, which is a very simple thing to do, and get these numbers pushed out so that you all can get your wage increases. But it is up to the White House discretion to do it. They can't be forced to do it via Congress, but we can certainly put political pressure on it and will. So if you live in a red district, a red state, your wage grade, or if you're GS in solidarity with wage grade, give them a call and say they need to get that DoD committee up and running so wage graders can get their increase for this year. It's ridiculous that they don't have this done.
Yeah. And that's a perfect example of someplace we will get we'll work with bipartisan group on Capitol Hill, and we'll get broad working support with those offices.
Thanks, Steve and Randy. It is 2 o'clock, and I'm sure we all have calls at 2 p.m. So we're gonna have to wrap it up there for the Q&A. But like I said, we will address your questions via email.
Okay. Well, hey, thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time. Thank you for your membership. Can't thank you enough for all you do for this country. Appreciate you.
Stay strong.